couple of years ago, my fiance and I lived in this condominium complex in Miami where it had three separate buildings, and our apartment was on the furthest one, the furthest away from the entrance, right? So we were just this other day, we were just driving in, and we see three people, a lady and two gentlemen, standing outside those two, in between those two apartment buildings. And they were looking up, and one of them was even pointing up. Immediately, without thinking, I said, "It's a bird, it's a plane, it's," and let's just say I didn't really have to finish the sentence. So before my fiance busted into laughing. And the moment was too perfect for Superman to be passing by. He asked me, "Oh my gosh, what, like, how did you think of that?" And I answered him, I don't know, it just came to me. And most people think that good ideas, creative ideas, just come to them. While it's process, it's a little different from that. My name is Rebeca Daolio. I am a speech communication specialist, entrepreneur, and speaker. I teach people how to speak in public. And however, today we're not going to talk about public speaking at all. We're going to talk about creativity and ways for you to improve your creative mind. You might ask yourself, so why would someone that teaches people how to speak will know some about creativity? And the answer is quite easy. It's because I was a dancer. And it's not like I don't use creativity today in my work. I do all the time. It's just that as a dancer, I didn't have a choice. I had to be creative. And it was my job to be creative, as it is your job to be creative. So, let's be honest, it's a hard job. It's a really hard job to do. And I never really felt or thought I was creative. I remember this one time I had to finish this choreography, and the deadline was right there. I didn't have time to play around. So I stood up and I told myself, that's it, I'm going to be creative. And can you guess how that went? It didn't went well. Did I finish the choreography? Yes, I did, because I had to, but I didn't really have creative movements to finish it. It was just a little boring, to be honest. And it's hard because I never thought I was creative. I never felt until one day I was told I was creative, and that changed everything for me. This is how they told me I was creative. It reads, "I felt jealousy of your creative mind." It's a short sentence, but if you see in the big picture, it changed the whole thing for me. It changed how I saw creativity. We often think that for like our creative ideas are just gonna show up. They haven't come quite yet. The inspiration just hasn't hit yet. It's gonna come, it just hasn't yet, you know. And let me tell you, creativity is not gonna knock at your door and ask you, "Excuse me, may I go in?" It doesn't work that way. We often think that in order to be creative, we need to be born with, right? Or we need to be right-brained. You know how they say that your left side brain is the rational, logical one, and the right brain is the emotional, creative one. And another thing that we usually think is that creativity just falls into your lap. Also, we think creative people are a little mad, you know, a little different, a little out there. That's why they have creative ideas. And I have to tell you, all those things are myths. They are not true, not a single one of them. So if those statements are not true, what is creativity? How can one become more creative? And let me tell you that neuroscientist Michael Garenbrand, Michael Gripko said that creativity, he defined creativity is an idea that is novel, good, and useful. There's nothing really whimsical about that, right? So he says that the creativity, for you to have creative ideas, your brain is when your brain pulls from the wealth of knowledge you store in your brain. So it pulls different ideas and make connection between them. And that's what it does. So you remember the story I told about the Superman and the three people standing outside? That was my brain pulling two different pieces of information, two different knowledge that I have, and put it a string to it, a connection. And that's why at that moment I had a creative, funny comment to make. So if you think about that, so that pulling and the catching of ideas, it's like this huge network web, right? It's with so many things, so many different things. And if you look at our brain, according to Jim Quick, there are these 4 primary brain wave states. Beta is the state we are in right now. So we're awake, right? And there's theta, which is the state when we are falls to sleep, when we're sleeping. In between those two brainwave states, we have alpha and theta. Alpha is a great state for learning, quick learning. Is when you're in a state of relaxed conscience. But right now we're interested in the theta state, because the theta state is a state of in and out of sleep. And the theta, when you're in the theta state, you have your most creative ideas. That's why the theta state is called creativity. Have you ever noticed when you're being as creative as possible, it's because you're in the state, but your mind just kind of drifts off and you start coming up with these great ideas. And you know this because it happens when you're taking a shower. I don't know about you, but I have the greatest ideas during a shower, and that's because we're in that state. But unfortunately, I never heard of anyone, but we don't just rush out of the shower to grab a piece of pen and paper or our phone to type out our idea. Usually the idea kind of fades away. And that's a little sad, right? Because we are at the peak of our creative mind and we cannot write down our ideas. But it's not quite all lost just yet. I have good news. You see, creativity is an ability. And for you to be good at any ability, you need to practice it. That's it. You can practice creativity. And everyone can. So for some people, might be a little easier, for some people a little harder, but everyone can know how to be creative. You just need to practice. And the great part about it is that practicing creativity can actually be a lot of fun. One way to improve creativity is through improvisational games and activities. I don't know if you know me, but if you don't know me by now, I love putting the people I give presentations to be part of the things I do. So I have a little improvisational game for you today. And you're going to you need a piece of paper and a pen, or you need to be ready to type in your computer. And Maybe you can stop this to do that, but here's how this activity works, right? It's called non-stop. I'm gonna set up a timer, and when I say go, I'm gonna give you a short list of subjects you can pick from. So you pick one of them. And when I say go, you're gonna write non-stop. That means without stopping. You may not stop for that amount of time that I give you, which since you're at home, you can actually put your own timing and try different, like longer periods of time or shorter. But for right now, for this activity, try 30 seconds. And in case you're in the moment, you're in the activity, and your brain starts to filling you in with like thoughts like, oh my gosh, I don't know what to write. What do I write about? That's exactly what you're going to write about. You're going to try to stay as much as possible in the topic you picked, but don't worry, if anything else different from that comes, you write that down. And the challenge is not to take your pen out of the paper, not to take your fingers out of the keyboard. Do not stop typing during that 30 seconds, okay? So that's your time. If you can stop the video, do it. If you cannot stop the video, do it later. And share with me, I don't know, find me on my social media and share with me your experience. I'm going to give you the list of subjects, and I hope you practice this. Here are they. Pick one and just go for it. See what happens. I'm gonna give you, I think, a little spoiler, just a little. It's not gonna interfere with anything, but it might be a little hard. It might feel weird. It might feel a little bit, uncomfortable to do the exercise, and that's totally okay, because you see, the first few times we try new things, we usually feel a little uncomfortable, and there's no wrong answer for improv activities. There are no wrong answers for it. The important thing is you keep doing and keep it working. Put a class together, set up a time with your friends or coworkers, and heck, invite me. I will join in. I love improv exercises. I do it all the time in my work. So try this. Let me know. Find me on my social media and let me know what happened. Like, I would love to see your results. And one thing is for you to be creative, right? In a game, in a fun activity, in a fun environment. But when we think about our work environment, everything kind of falls apart for our creative mind, right? Because you're asked to come up with this big, great creative solution for this big, complicated problem. But how's your environment? How are you feeling at that moment that you're asked? You're tired, probably frustrated. There's a lot of pressure on you. And plus, you're in that beta state. Do you remember that awakened state? So how do you think your creative ideas are going to come? They're not going to come that great, I'm sure. We are, in our work environment mostly, we're constantly told that you need to be creative. We're constantly pressured on having creative ideas. We're constantly told that in order to be successful, you need to be creative. We're constantly told, think outside the box. And yes, I get that. I get why people say think outside the box, because you have all that empty space, all that outer space to get ideas from. You have all of that to think about and to come up with creative things. So the problem is, what if your box is not this big, but is this big? What if your box is the size of Africa? And I know for a fact that your box is really, really big, because all your experiences, all your all your knowledge, all the things you ever seen and felt are inside that box. And when you think outside the box, you are not considering all of that. And do you remember that network that we talked about, that you get the connections to make to have creative ideas? If you think outside of that, you're not going to make those connections. So if you don't make those connections, you do not have such creative ideas. So that's why today I'm going to ask you not to think outside the box. I'm going to ask you to think like there is no box. That's right, there is no box. There's no limit to imagination. There's no limit for ideas. There's no limit for creativity. There is no box. Like Bruce Garenbrand once said, creativity doesn't wait for that perfect moment. It fashions its own perfect moments out of ordinary ones. Thank you.